Okay, I'd like to call the Board of Finance special meeting. It's a regular, it's legal and special. It's a regular one. Threw me off. Town of Stonington Board of Finance meeting on March 5th. My name is Dan Smith, Vice Chair. We have Sarah Nelson, Lou Gincarella, Amy Friend, Secretary, Carl Johnston online, Gary Nino, and Winona Burdine. Okay, all right. Huh? Yeah, Carl's online. Public comments. Brian. Okay. Okay, any online? All right. We got none. All right. Review undesignated fund balance.
Okay, so I had asked Mike if I could do a few things before I did my budget presentation. And one thing was, it's always good to know how much money you have in the bank before you think about what you might be spending. So I thought, why not give you the most up-to-date with some notes on here what might happen. We did talk to the auditors today. They did. I asked, Suzanne asked, anything we should know, any surprises, and as of right now, there is none. So by the end of March, they'll be coming back with their presentation, but that's looking good so far, but we don't want to count our chickens until we know for a fact that they're there. So as of right now, we have 17.04% in the undesignated fund. Note number one, $426,153 for steep grant. That money's still in the undesignated fund, but it's out on paper because it's earmarked for steep. But because we haven't spent it, it's still there. Once it is spent, $340,922 would go back. 80% goes back. It's in your packet, Lou. You got it? Okay. Same thing with the $58,000, which is for the ADA trails. That has not started yet. It's going to start probably in April. Once we spend that money, that all goes back because our 20% match is in-kind work by the Department of Public Works. Last thing on note 5 is the $517,973. That's the anticipated give back is unaudited. We're anticipating now that number is going to be pretty close. So then we know about those things. But there's some other things I just want to let you know that we're trending well in North Stonington on the revenue side. Tuition reimbursement next year. This is for this year's closeout, next year's budget, not the one we're in now. We have 104,000. We should be ahead for next year. That's why we're budgeting it. Short-term investments, Sean gave me a number of 105,000, and the obligation of funds, which we're probably going to do the obligation of funds on May 5th at the budget meeting, and that's 124,993. And we'll go over that prior to that because that's going to be at a town meeting anyway. So we'll go through that with you. But I just want to give you an idea. We're already at 17 now, and things are trending nicely in the future for this. I know the Board of Finance has some thoughts on how they might want to take that money and use it. And I'll leave that to you guys. But I just wanted to give you an up-to-date number.
Okay, just let everybody know, Mike Anderson is online now.
Okay, thanks. Welcome, Mike.
So I just want to clarify, when you say take that money and use it, there's only two possible options.
No, I understand. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But the Board of Finance has talked about buying something outright versus financing, versus working with the budget. There's things that you do that are all within the guidelines of what it's earmarked to do.
The policy says, and there's only two bullets: reduction of the mill rate, reduction of town debt.
Correct.
We got to stay within those guideposts.
Right. And if you're buying something in capital, get it out of capital, that's actually would be a reduction in mill rate eventually, right? Because you're taking something out of capital.
Let's not connect.
I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. I'm just know that you have options.
Well, it's becoming apparent that the undesignated fund keeps becoming a recurring topic more frequently than I've ever seen it before. And I want to make sure we're eyeing it the right way.
So,
This is the taxpayers' money in case we have a bad event.
and that's exactly why we should be eyeing it, because if it's over the 17%, which you people put in as your high threshold,
Mhm.
then if it's over that percentage, then you should be discussing it, because that is taxpayer money.
Exactly. But it should only be used aligned with what the policy says it could be used for. That's all.
I am not going to advise how to use it. It's a Board of Finance decision.
Well, if I could just clarify on that. That would be after any capital expenditures are made that we didn't finance. So that's where that 17, that's where those two bullets come in, as I understand it. It's so we do the budget process and decide during that process, instead of borrowing money, we're going to buy something. After buying something, if we are still in excess of the 17%, our self-imposed number, then we do one of those two things.
I think we as a board need to get aligned on that because there's a lot of people looking at it from a lot of different angles.
That's the only way you would run it. I don't know how else you would run it.
Well, you're one of 8 people on the board.
Well, yeah, but explain to me how else you would do it. That's all.
I don't think it's something we need to get into here, but I do think it's something the Board of Finance needs to get aligned on.
At some point,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to have that.
Yep.
Probably before we start talking in depth into numbers.
So my message was only how much you had or could have. You decide how you want to spend it. Okay. Thank you. Next, appropriations. So there's 2 appropriations, but I'm only going to ask for one. I found out, our treasurer came in and visited with me this week and told me about a statute I didn't know, which is you cannot take money out of the same budget line twice in the same fiscal year without going to a town meeting, even if it's not $20,000. So because this tribal affairs was $3,052, I would still have to wait to a town meeting. So he suggested, and I did this. I emailed Perkins Coie and said, I only want to do this once. Do we have any other invoices? Can you see us getting any other invoices between now and the end of the year? If the answer is yes, and I think it probably will, then tell me what that is so I can come for one appropriation and do it at one town meeting so we don't have to do it more than once. So I'm going to pull this back to last night, the Board of Selectmen, and it was Brett Mastriani's idea. Why approve it tonight? Let's pull it back until we have more information and come back to the Board of Finance. So I'm pulling it back tonight. We're not talking about it, other than what I just did.
Mhm.
It is, it's in there. So it should be in there. It's 2025-003. Perkins Coie for $3,052.
Now, I do have a question. We have a town ordinance that talks about anything tribal. We have to fight to the nth degree.
Correct.
Right? Is there anything that talks about that, about paying the bill? Would paying bills go underneath that? Where when we fight that, anything.
So I don't think we-
tribal, would that still fall underneath paying the bills for tribal?
So I think we have to pay it because of the ordinance, but I think you still, because it's a line item, I think you still have to go to town meeting and let people know what you're doing.
Yeah, but if you constantly getting bills throughout the year, which say you get 8 bills, wouldn't our town ordinance supersede that state statute on that?
It may, I could talk to the town attorney about it, Dan, but
Well, the man that brought it up is standing right there.
actually, I think it does.
No, I think it does.
I think it does. I think it,
No,
it can't- so it can't be weaker than the state statute, but it could be more enforced than the state statute.
I'm just saying that what happens if they were billing us monthly? Well, you have to wait till the end of the year and pay that all out, or have to accumulate a budget so large to be able to pay that out if you can only withdraw on that line item.
So I think in that case, it's a matter of budgeting, and when I discuss why our budget, you'll see my budget, it's up
Yep.
$10,000 this for next year, so.
Yeah.
And I did get some information today that, I think it's 21 Bureau of Indian Affairs departments have been closed. And they're running around now because there's a big layoff in that part of the federal government. So I think that the bills will slow down because there's going to be less action because tribes will be taking less action.
It's just something I was thinking after watching you guys last night. I'm like, well, maybe that's something that could just be asked.
Good point.
Okay, Sarah?
I don't understand. Like, what do you mean we can't withdraw
We
the same
can,
line item twice?
we can, but the second time it has to go to a town meeting according to state statute. So
From a budget item?
yeah, it is for the same budget item. So
Sorry, I'm missing something important.
So the
We have
truck,
other budget items and we withdraw from them all the time.
no, we don't.
No,
Appropriation.
yeah. you
Okay.
can't
Oh, yes, yes.
appropriate
So
it
we didn't
twice.
fund that line item.
Right, so we did an appropriation, I think it was 14,000 and change back in November. And now this would be the second one in this fiscal year. So that's why we'd have to go to a town meeting. So I guess we can't take an appropriation out of the same line item twice in the same budget year. Okay, so anyway, I'm pulling that one back. The other one is the Boom Bridge Road bridge construction. I gave you attachments to that. So what happened is that bridge actually got finished. If you remember, the cows walked across it on January 6, 2021. And then the job was done. We waited until November of 2022 and said that there's nothing going on with this. Why do we have $54,000 in the line item? So we deobligated that money. In January 27th, I think, 2023, a audit came out that said, no, the state's ready. Don't forget, this was Rhode Island and Connecticut, Wesley and North Stonington. So finally, the audit comes out and says, the audit's done and you basically owe 9,000, whatever the number is, 9,000,
582.84.
correct, to Trans Systems Corp. What they were doing is they were putting money in an escrow account so that was like taking a bond on the bridge. When the job was done, Trans Systems Corp got a hold of us and said, hey, by the way, we just got a copy of the audit. You owe us 9,000 plus. Melissa did all the back studies. She got a hold of the auditors, and it is that we got paid in full. This is not our money. We got overpaid by this amount. And now we just have to turn it back to the people that we put it in an escrow account. So that's it.
So just looking through, and I just used my human calculator over here, and he also agreed. The numbers don't match.
So, okay.
So on the front, the appropriation for this is 952,881. And everything else is $9,582.84.
Okay. Okay, so
Where,
it's probably a typo.
Okay.
It's 3 cents. So yeah, if we want, we can change I think we can change the appropriation with a notation and then you can sign off on it as
It
a,
could be a lot. It could be just a cross out and
so we would make it 84 cents.
the one you sent previously, Bob,
Yes,
was 9,528.81. Is that not correct?
it was in the attachment I gave tonight, Mike, it's
Okay.
84 cents, not 81 cents.
no,
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 it's not that.
It's
no.
not-
It's 95.82,
Yeah,
84. You get 95.28.81.
81.
The motion is for this amount, the 5,000, I should be $9,528.81.
Yeah, so you're
That's,
short.
that's what you sent earlier.
Yeah, so you're short.
That's from your email of February 28th.
That's correct. Again, so again, I think that is a typo. So we can handle it. I guess we can handle it one of two. Excuse me.
It's off by $54.03.
So why don't I do this? I can bring this back to the Board of Selectmen at the next meeting and we can do this. I'll correct the corrected numbers. I'll talk to
Yeah.
Melissa and see which number is correct
Okay,
and do it on our meeting on the 18th and bring it to you on the 19th.
that'll work.
Was that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds.
That way it's
That'll
correct.
work.
I'll change it on the appropriation form. So we have no appropriations tonight.
Hooray. Okay. With that being said, Board of Selectmen present proposed general government operating debt and capital budgets.
All right, so
I have a logistical question.
Okay, logistical question.
Please.
Go ahead.
Does this mean I can take this out, my old one out, and replace it with a new one?
Well, that's up to you because I think like Wyoming, some people are keeping 1, 2, 3, and 4 in their book, but you can do whatever you want
Thank you.
because you should have the first 3 also. So I didn't know I was presenting the capital. I thought we already did that.
I'm just reading off the agenda.
Huh?
I'm just reading off the agenda.
Yeah. So
If it's the same, Bob, just tell it's the same, hasn't changed.
well, actually, there is one change. We took 25,000 out of it,
Okay,
but I can go through that. And it's in the budget, so I can go through it. Yep, I'll go through it. All right.
floor is yours.
Thank you. So you should have 2. You should have the budget itself, which is draft 4, and then you have the itemized, more easy to read paperwork. So on the front page, you'll see that it says that the budget right now, the budget percent increase would be 238,928, which is a 4.12% increase. I also told you I was going to show this 2 ways, one with and one without the maintenance. So without the maintenance, it's 2.40% increase. And obviously it's $100,000 less, so it's 138,928. I want to start with the revenue because there was a couple of things that happened in revenue that helped us. One is when Darrell came and presented the grand list to the Board of Finance, I always thought the number seemed a little bit low to me. I knew there was going to be some deductions in the way we did motor vehicles and also in the veterans. But I asked him and Cecile if they could go back and look at this, and they found through QDS, which is our subcontractor, that there was a mistake made in the favor of the town on the way they do underground cables and wires. So you'll see that if you go back to draft 1, if you still have it in your book, I have it with you, and you see now there's a pretty good increase in line A.100. Because that line now is 18,213,323. And originally in draft 1, it was 17,900 and something. I did, for Mike Anderson's benefit, I did remember to put it in at 98.5 this year and not 100% like last year. So that made a big difference in the overall revenue line, which doesn't really do much as far as the budget itself, but it tells you what we have in revenue. So the first time in draft 1, I think it was maybe 459,000 or somewhere around that number. And now it's at 748,922.56. So that was a nice increase for the town that we have. Now I'm going to talk about what the other side of it, the budget side, the expenditures. I always hate the fact that the first line on the budget I talk about is my pay. And if you notice drafts 1, 2, and 3, it had nothing in there. One of the other selectmen, not named Bob, decided last night that they wanted to put some money in that line. I was against it, and I'm still not comfortable with it. I thought this was a year that I would not take a raise. And I will tell you, if at the end of this discussion, and when you meet down the road and talk about our budget, if you do want us to decrease our budget, that's the first place I'm going, because I'm uncomfortable with it. With that said, that was 3% increase. So with that said, there's a B100, that's Board of Selectmen category. We have an 11,477.90 is the increase, $11,477.90. And that's pretty much all contractual, because in that line is the admin finance officer, the county generalist, myself, and the 2 selectmen. We didn't increase pretty much anything else in that line, except for there's one new thing you'll see on B 1.15 HR administration. So Suzanne, finally we have someone that knows how to do HR, and it's and she's good at it. And she also understands that there's a certain amount of things we have to do as far as documentation and training, which we never really accounted for before. So because there's a fee, there's testing we have to do. We have to do medical testing, those kind of things. Suzanne, correct? What else do you have in that line?
The motor vehicle background checks for those who use the town vehicle is one of the items. Other background checks for new employees coming on board. Kind of thing.
So it's not a number we ever had in there before, but you put in just to be on the safe. That's not a big number, but it's better than trying to take it out of some miscellaneous line when it attached to town hall. So it's just getting a little bit more accurate in how we're doing things. and planning ahead of time. The probate court, that increase, well, probate court, the increase isn't in the judge itself. It's in they're having us renting out space. Us, Groton, Stonington, and Ledyard all have to rent space in the old Fitch High School where the junior high, I guess, where the probate judge is. And it was a small increase there to do that. So that increase is $1,224. I don't know. Again,
Do your guesses.
so it's probably still cheaper than when we had our own probate judge in our own building and we was in that space. So, which just goes back a few years.
Just keep poking the bear.
You keep poking the first selectman. Board of Finance, the only increase there is I tried to estimate don't forget, this is the year that you have to go back out for an RFP for auditors. And using the same kind of increase we saw in the last 2 years, I use that same percentage to come up with the increase of $1,180.80. The assessor's office, we have 2 employees in there, so that's contractual. And we start on April 2nd, we start our negotiations with one of our unions, the town hall union. After that, we're starting with the steelworkers union, which is the town garage union. I put in a 3% number just to have a placeholder. I don't know what it's going to be. But if we don't put anything in there and then all of a sudden we're off. So it may be under 3, could be 3, could be over 3, but the negotiations are just beginning, but I didn't want to have the town not have money estimated in there. The B500, the BAA, which is B5.00. This is a reval year, and they're expecting some appeals. We always get appeals in a reval year. It's not a big increase. Tax collector is contractual and some additional expenses. Treasurer is strictly contractual. Attorney fees, there's no change. We're actually fairly under right now. I don't use town attorney unless I absolutely have to. I barely speak to him unless there's something we need to speak to him. So we've been doing pretty good with last year we had the conservation easement disruption on the Mashantucket property was one. This year, we're doing well this year. We really haven't needed him for this. So there's no change. Recreation, you'll see there's also an offset. I put on here $8,100 offset on the revenue side, but that's program expense as they expand programs. B20 fixed charges. We actually have a net savings of $83,204.36. And you wonder, how's that happen? So if we turn to that on your budget. So I sat down with Melissa and we looked at all the employees. How does this affect each employee? If we had new employees versus older employees, single people versus families and so on. And she came up with the calculations that, and I'll be honest with you, she's on top of this. And you'll see on the budget itself, the stuff in green is actually reductions. And that's how we came up with the $83,574.36 reduction. Next line item is elections and town meetings. I'm sorry, go ahead, Wyona.
B1601, the program expense, what was your comment on that? I'm sorry, that's an increase of 14,500.
Right, so it's an increase, B16. So it's an increase of 15,486 on my sheet. Last night we had, there was a, no, we didn't do it on that. Hold on a second. 16. Are you not getting it? Oh, 14.5, just in that one particular line, not the whole, but not the whole.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is program expense where they've added programs. When they add programs, they have more to offer. A lot of it gets offset with income because when the people pay to be in the programs, but some of it is also overhead. When they have to pay, if it's like, say, summer camp or basketball referees or soccer referees and so on. So that was what their estimated was. And it should be itemized in the rec because they did a presentation. It should be in their presentation. It's in your folder to get it a little more itemized.
So I guess I was just mistakenly thinking that the change in expenses was gonna be offset by a 4.01, which is the rec commission
So that's a,
input,
right.
which is, it's going up by 8,100. So there's a mismatch of about $6,500.
Right, because it's not always a 1-for-1. If you're adding additional programs, you might be adding additional instructors, additional referees and so on. So there's an expense of the program. But there was an increase in the revenue from last year, that $8,100, which I just wanted to let you know was in there. Some of that was offset.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, where do we leave off? He was on was it registrars?
Hey, Bob, I do have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Just to refresh my memory, I think this was discussed on B 20.06, which is the pension. It
Yes.
went down. Is that because we reached the max
No,
amount, or
no,
I
because
remember this was discussed at one point.
yeah, so if we have someone that leaves, it hasn't been here for the full 5 years and not vested, and all that money gets left in the bucket. So that goes towards paying towards the retirement.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's not, just so you know, in negotiations, that's not on the table to change that. There was some talk about making it less than 5 years, and I shouldn't probably talk about negotiations, but it's not on the table. Okay. B21, there was a slight change last night. You got something from the registrar saying that they miscalculated their hours. Last night, the Board of Selectmen also took back, you see it, the change says 305. That happened last night because they had in there a primary, and we don't think there's going to be a primary. There's almost never a primary on a local municipal election. So, and if they do end up having a primary, they can always come back to the town and say, we didn't expect this. So it was like a $1,500 knockout last night. B22 Town Hall. So there's a net savings there, and the biggest reason was in the North Stoughton Education, this facility. We keep coming under, you see, it was $57,000 actual in 2023-24. We budgeted 80,000 for the year in now. I don't think we're not tracking to be up near that number, so we dropped it to 70,000. I will say that the early learners are getting close to taking space on the second floor. When they do, they'll take a bigger percentage of utilities and be giving us more money towards square footage. Social services. So in social services, the two biggest things there, well, there's one big one. There's two fairly new ones. One is, I'll do the small one first, Frights and Lights. Jen Strunk came up and asked, I do a lot of this out of my pocket. I think it's a good thing for the town, both the Frights and Lights and the Christmas light parade. Is there any way I can get some help? So she put in, it gave us a number, wasn't a high number. We put it in the budget. And as of right now, it's still in the budget as far as the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Finance have a different idea. That's up to you guys. But we didn't take it out at this point. I think what she does is a great benefit for the town. Brings the town together. And and I hate to see people that do these wonderful things taking money out of their pocket. So the bigger one was and she did a presentation, was the giving closet. So the giving closet, as we know, it was $35,000 was what was asked for. And the Board of Selectmen dropped that to 20,000. And we used some formulas on, we were giving, how much space was she getting in this town that we were giving her for free? How much utilities, what was the amount of utilities we were giving her for free? And then she also made a statement, and don't get me wrong, she does wonderful things. She was saying that there was a 46%, I think, was the number of how many actual North Stoughton residents she was working on. She's come to my office since and told me it's much higher, but she's very happy that we still have 20,000 in the budget. I thought that seemed to be a fair number for what she's doing. It's still going to grow, but there's a contingency with that. The Board of Selectmen said that we will only give that money if she forms a 501c3, not under the school's umbrella, not under the town's umbrella. It's her own 501c3. We just don't want to hand a check to an individual from town. So if she has I guess it's 501c3 incorporated, if she gets that done, then we at least have somewhere we can put the funds. And that's what we would be willing to do. So that's the number where we settle that for now. Further discussion, we can see if you have an appetite to change the number, but we thought that was a fair number, looking at her presentation and what she's up against. Selectmen's engineering, that's $2,500. It's been in there each year I've been here, and I actually have used it. When we did CLA, we did the engineering for the parking lot out here, and there's a potential, we did one for a potential parking lot behind Town Hall. That's where that money came from. So at least it's in the budget to do it, and I have used it. Information technology is a slight savings because we've interviewed some people, and it's right now it's kind of down to 2 candidates. Neither of them we think we have to start at the top step, but both of them we wouldn't start at the bottom. So somewhere in the middle, and at the middle step, there's a slight decrease in that line of $1,570.80. Question? Somebody had a question?
So you're gonna hire, you have to hire someone. You can't use like an agency, right?
So it's tough because of the way Town Hall is set up, and with our users every day, and it's not the most IT, including myself, IT knowledgeable group, right? So a lot of times there's computers going down,
Yeah.
and so on. And it's good to have someone on site that can fix these problems, as well as build us over the next year or two, build us an IT program that's going to be good for years to come. And if this person leaves, the next person comes in, and right now it's a mismatch because we've had 3 different IT people in the last 3 years. So we had Jim Russell for 7 years. He left. We had Quentin for a year. And now we have a consultant working 1 day a week. And they all have their own ideas of what IT should look like in North Stonington. So now we've got this kind of hodgepodge of IT. And we really want someone that can be here for a while, that can get us straightened out. And they know they have to do it within a budget, but just get us in a very comfortable position, especially on cyber attacks, things like that we all worry about now. So, we've got 2 candidates. I think they're both good candidates. There may be one reason why one might outweigh the other one. If we hire one, myself and Suzanne would like to make a decision by Friday. We'd have somebody on board before the end of March.
Okay. I think, so technology is like engineering, right? There's so many different specialties and departments, and finding one person that specializes in most of them, like what you need, is very difficult. A lot of times when you're dealing with like a smaller scenario like our town, there are organizations that do this, and they like several that are actually local to this area, where they have staff. And so if you need a consult on cyber, that they usually will assign like a primary person, but that person has got access to additional knowledge that's maybe not everything. So when you think about it, you need somebody who's like an expert in cybersecurity, an expert on desktop computing, an expert on networks, an expert on firewalls. Like there's that's a lot of different things you're asking one person to do. And obviously you guys are pretty far along, so it's a little late for my advice here, but I would just, depending on how this lands, or if we end up in a scenario where we, again, don't have, an IT person, I would highly recommend that you consider looking at a service. They typically aren't even necessarily more expensive than having a full-time employee, because they'll take care of the benefits and the other things.
We did look at that because we talked to Preston, and they have that. We just find we have 7 buildings, much more than Preston. We have 7 buildings we have to maintain. The fire company, the highway garage, the transfer station, this building, senior center, Parks and Rec, 2 buildings at Town Hall. So because we have so many different buildings and there's different systems, and I said it's kind of a hodgepodge of systems, and our telephones are put into the system. We've had times with our previous IT person where internet can't be down. The town clerk has to be running. Or if it's tax season, the tax collector has to be running. And I know what you're saying, if you had an outside source, they might be able to remotely try to fix the problem.
No, they'll staff people. like, there's companies that are here in southeastern Connecticut that staff people on site. They
We,
just don't work for you. They don't work for the town. They work for a larger organization. And so if they get stuck, right, if they're trying to figure out why the network's down and they can't figure it out, they actually have a resource of people that they can go back to.
we did talk to one about that who was willing to do, how many days a week was he gonna, oh, you only do 3 hours a day, right? Monday through Friday. And it was actually a fairly expensive proposition to have him come in those times. So I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think if we strike out again, doing it this way, we have to look, you can't just keep doing the same way all the time and just keep failing, right? So I like the fact of having someone that we have that can come here and fix this if we need to fix it, or go to the fire station or wherever he has to go, or she has to go. But I think that I think if it fails again, I really think we had a really good guy in our first guy, but he had been here 7 years and he got a great opportunity at EB. And that's what happens. We're the little town. So we get people on the way up and we get people on the way down. Typically, we don't get those mid 40s who are in the middle of their careers making, 150,000 a year. So, and we don't pay that. So we pay basically 75,000 a year. But I appreciate the input. And if this goes down or fails again, I'd love you to be on that committee, that hiring committee. So, and we did bring in someone that has, I don't know if you know Mike Stock, but he's someone that's very well versed in IT. He lives in town. He lives on Wyosop Road. He was worked for many years like CVS and companies like that. And we brought him into the interview team because he could ask questions that myself and Suzanne couldn't ask. So, yeah, we kind of know what we don't know.
I just want to mention it's also a union position, so it's not so easy to outsource.
Okay.
Good point. See? Thank you. Any other questions on IT for now? Hopefully next time I see you, I can tell you we've hired somebody. They're great and it's working out perfectly. We'll see. Public safety. So that's a big number in public safety. There's a couple of things that helped. One was the 9/11 dispatching. We're changing from Groton, which we've had for a number of years. We're going to QV. I went up and visited with the fire company and the ambulance with QV. They handle more remote rural towns like we have. It was a nice reduction, but also I think we're going to get better service. We were with Groton. They're a big company, but they also do police. And we're the only really small rural town they had. And a lot of times it seemed like we can hear it in our office all day long. We seem to be like the afterthought. QB is not going to treat us like that. So they've already been down to visit a number of times. So I wrote my letter to Groton because I had to give them 6 months to tell them we were changing. And they understood it. I talked to John Burt, the town manager. He gets it where we're coming from. This will be a better situation for us. The other stuff, most of the stuff from the fire department and the ambulance was in your presentations. I did not touch, the Board of Selectmen did not touch operating on either of those. But last night, what we did do is we did a big reduction in the per diem. And the reason we did that, and I understand that the per diem was 55,000 and some of it was, one of them was covered by ARPA for 3 years. And then we went to a second one. It was 110,000. They're asking for 147. It was a big jump. And I was just thinking, okay, if it's just salary and I do raised 2.25%, 0.25% for 4 years in a row, what would I be at? I was coming up with 62,000. So we lowered it by using 62 instead of 55 in those two places, and said it's up to the fire company to handle the fringe on that. It's up to them. I did get visited today from the fire company, and we had a pretty good conversation about it. If they come back to the Board of Finance or the Board of Selectmen at a later date, that's up to them. But I think when they left today, they understood where I was coming from on this. And we know that there's going to be a second budget presented to you next Wednesday. And I also know that budget's going to be a tough budget. And we also know our taxpayers only get one tax bill. It's not, you don't get one for the school and one for the town. So anything we can do on our side, if it helps the town as a whole. And that's when I looked at this particular number, and you'll see the one I come up with the Royal Library. I looked at that number and thought this is ways we can help the school budget out a bit. Everything else with the fire company we've done, I mean, the capital hasn't been touched. The operating hasn't been touched at this point. So this was a line I thought we could make some movement, and I did. And the Board of Selectmen agreed with me.
Bob, what's B 2615?
There you go.
Traffic cameras.
So those are flock cameras. So those cameras, they're not for speed. They're not for red light running.
What are they for?
They're for crime. They're for crime. So the state police, we have them throughout the state of Connecticut, but not down Route 2. I went to a seminar that Preston, they'd like to have Preston, Griswold, Norwich, and North Stonington, and Stonington all get them. We would put their $3,000 a piece plus an original setup charge for the first year. And then they maintain the camera. Each year it's $3,000 per camera. If we put 2 on Route 2, we have 4 lights going between the fire company and the bottom of Cossatic Hill. If there's a hit and run, a break and entering, and a murder, and any kind of a crime, they'll be able to track that vehicle going from town to town to town, so they know where it is. It's basically a weapon used by the police department to solve crime.
But is this our needs or the state police's needs?
Well, it depends. I mean, the state police would like to have it because it helps them do their job. But I'm also thinking it's the town's need because we still have an unsolved hit and run over near Montepetito from last year. If we had these cameras, that might have been solved. Norwich has cameras and they have solved some crimes with Legend. It doesn't have to be something that has to stay. It just made sense.
So we could exit at any time if it turns out that it's got down the road balloon payments or the goes up or they want.
Yes,
cameras.
We would just sign a contract to be $3,000 a year plus that original setup the first year. If we decide that they're not working or the state police say they're not working, we don't need them, we can eliminate them. You can eliminate them this year. We don't have to have them. I just think when it comes time that if something terrible happened in North Stonington, I like to know if we could solve it quickly. That's all. And it didn't seem like it's a lot of money
There's
to do.
a lot
it.
of roads besides Route 2 and well,
There is, but but they also want them on 164, 165, 395, all the roads. So not the back roads, just the main roads. Sarah, you had a question?
A couple of years ago, there was an incident. I still have a little trauma from it because our previous superintendent did a very lousy job alerting us of this incident, but there was a car that flew down, that was being chased from Massachusetts down to Rhode Island and then ended up being stopped here. Is that the kind of thing we're talking about that this would help with?
Well, they would know where the vehicle is. Yes. I remember that was the one where Jason actually drove him off the road using his car.
Oh, I remember because the note that the voicemail that came home to all the parents was there's a very serious situation. And we literally thought people were attacking the school at the time. It was horrifying, but,
so it would help you solve that type of crime. But the thing is, so if let's say there was a forced entry, a break-in and someone got hurt and there was a robbery and now that car disappears, the car's probably going to try to get out of town as fast as they can. So they're going to take more of a major road. They're not going to go down East Clarks Falls Road, I wouldn't think. So if they're on a major road and we can pick them up, now, if let's say they say it's a small black car that had a bumper sticker on the back, this thing will pull every small black car with a bumper sticker on the back, not even the license plate, just a bumper sticker, and they'll start honing in on that vehicle. And they've solved a heck of a lot of crimes. When I was in the seminar, we were looking at Live Camera in San Diego at the time, same company doing this across the United States. So it's just a way to keep a town safer or to solve something that happened in town quicker. So it's something we have to have. It's probably more of a nice to have, but it's also if it helps the overall safety in North Stonington, I'm for it. That's all.
Okay. So can we have some sort of trial on this? I mean, are there any bounding conditions that we're agreeing to by doing this?
No,
so we're going to try this for a year and revisit it.
We can do that. But it's be 3,000.
I'd like to know how many times we actually use them.
You may never use it. Lisbon just put in 5. I know that. And, but then again, the first selectman in Lisbon used to be a state policeman, but they just put in 5. I think the more towns that have them, the more benefit it'll have. Right. So, and again, I was assured it would not be, I said, I don't want traffic cams for a speeding or red light running, none of that, because we don't need Big Brother, but I do want to solve crime. So,
Bob?
Yes.
Carl, it's only 2 cameras you're talking about.
2 cameras. Yep.
And then also do you have access to them cameras if you need to look at them, or you have to go through that particular company to get information?
We have access to the state police.
So you'd have to have an ongoing investigation to get that, or could you call and ask?
We would do it, we would do it through our resident troopers.
Okay, so 2 cameras in the size of our town, you're only gonna cover Route 2 with the 2 lights, am I correct?
And that's all they were hoping to do. They, down the road, they might try to do something on, like say 184, but that runs parallel to 95. They're trying to get the main roads that come and go out of town. So they're looking at 164, 165, Route 2A, 2, those kind of roads.
Okay, so the cameras that are up right now, the state monitor, not the state police. There's
Right.
cameras at the on-off ramps on 95 on the access road. There's cameras sitting, I think, right now in the middle of right there at Main Street and Route 2.
So one's on the lights where Main Street is 201 hit Route 2, or those are more for changing of the light, Carl.
Okay.
They're not for this use. As far as the cameras on 95, they are for this use, but those are national roads, the federal roads, are not just state roads. So they handle that.
All right, so if we're gonna pay for having the cameras put up, you're gonna have, they're gonna be able to use them. But if we don't want them, they take them back and we get a refund for the cameras?
No, we'd have to sign a 1-year contract, year to year, $3,000 per camera for the year. And then in the initial setup, which I have in the,
Yep, it's 1,300.
yes, that'd be a one-time fee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So,
I mean, this isn't like a hill I want to die on, believe me.
oh, of
No.
course.
Yeah, I get that, but we should be looking at every nickel. I mean, we're looking at cutting the library, we're looking at cutting the school, we're looking at cutting everything we need to. And yet we're putting in cameras that we're not sure we actually need, but they're really nice to have according to what the state troopers are telling us. Yeah,
The state police think they need them, and they have proof where they've solved a lot of crimes by using these cameras. Not here because we don't have them.
Are there any grants for this?
No, not really.
No Crime Watch or anything like
Not
that?
that I know of, Dan. So again, it's if you come back and say we have to drop our budget, that's probably one of the lines we'll be looking at after this feedback.
Just that you had mentioned, just a clarification. Are we going to hear from the ambulance again or the fire department? They've already come through. We're not going to see them again, right?
No, they've come through.
Just wanna-
So you saw their presentations. They come through. They're in our budget in their entirety except for the per diem.
Mhm.
It's up to you now to look at my budget as a whole and decide if you think there should be change to it. Okay, so Public Works, that's pretty much all contractual. There's new training we have to do. We got visited by OSHA about a month ago, which we haven't been visited in years. And there's some training we have to do with them. There's some LOSUP that again is somewhat offset on the revenue side. And there's increase in tipping fees, which is again also offset on the revenue side. Page 3, conservation and health is there's a legislative increase of 1,100. That goes by so many dollars per capita. It's the first time we've got a legislative increase in like 3 years. The senior center is actually a savings of $785.71 because their expenses are lower than they tracked lower than they have been in the last few years. So why put the money there? And actually, the biggest one you can see there is the $100,000, the one that's in red. And that's the miscellaneous line for school miscellaneous, but school maintenance line. Again, $100,000. The library, I have no change because they actually asked for $115,000, but we lowered that last night to $100,000, which is the same as last year. So there's no change in that ask as you're receiving it tonight. But the $100,000 is obviously a big change. And that's why when I present, if you look at underneath that, it says budget changes by drafts. You see the 4 drafts, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see what we've done. Started at 376,832 at a 6.50% increase, and that was with no changes at all, no reductions. And through the series of drafts and Board of Selectmen meetings, we've got now down to 238,928 as our increase at 4.12%. If you account for that $100,000, we'd be at a 138,928 at a 2.4%. Looking at our previous three budgets, you'll see where we were in dollars and where we were in percentages. Except for the 2022-23, we're lower than those asked in each of those years. And if you count that $100,000 for the maintenance, if you took that out, we'd actually be lower than the 2022-23, which gives us the lowest budget we've had in 4 years, budget increase. But obviously, we're not taking the 100,000 out. It's there.
Bob, can I ask a question about
Sure.
100,000? So can we think of this as a line item that would have in the past showed up under the Board of Ed budget, correct?
Yes, I have a line for maintenance in that budget.
And without looking back, do you know what that was last year?
So look, you'll hear about it next week, next Wednesday, but if you watch the last meeting, I think it was around 236,000, which is the maintenance line of a lot of that. Some of that had to do with HVAC, which was the biggest number. They gave the capital committee a list of all their maintenance. We went through it, and myself and Alan, and we came up with, I think, 102,000 that we thought was probably worth of being town maintenance, and the balance was not town maintenance. I had Sarah helped develop actually developed, and I just fine tuned it a bit, a maintenance agreement with the school. It's a trial, something that we would have an understanding on who would cover what using the formula that I presented to the tri-board a few months ago. It's a work in progress. It'd probably be 2 or 3 years to iron out the kinks. But in that maintenance agreement, when maintenance comes up, the school contacts this town. We decide, say, Randy contacts Alan. We decide on how to get it fixed, and then how do we get it fixed in the most efficient and least expensive way. And then secondly, who's going to pay for it? And if we come to a point where it's a pretty big number and we can't decide between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed who's responsible, we can always reactivate the capital committee to act as an arbitration board.
So if I was a taxpayer, I think my question would be, is this more geography or is this a $100,000 increase? And I think that that's the messaging that we need to refine a little bit.
So it's not, it's an increase in the town budget because we didn't carry it before. It used to be, okay, it happened at the school, it's their problem, right? That's the way it's always been, whether it be capital. We did have a permanent school building committee for a few years. Where they would be funded at, I think there was 50,000 a year, and then it became 75,000 a year. And then with the new schools, that committee went away. And now they're finding 3 and 4 years in, they still have maintenance issues. So the town could just say, you know what, it's your budget, you deal with it. Or the towns can say, those are our buildings, which is what I said when I presented to the tri-board. We have to admit there are buildings. We need to take care of them. And if we're taking care of them, I have more confidence they're going to be taken care of correctly.
But to Winona's point, and I agree with you 100%, this should be a budget line transfer. It shouldn't be an increase. It shouldn't be a decrease. We're not cutting it. It's just they used to spend it here. We're transferring it over here because it's the town's responsibility, not the school's.
Right, so from the town's point of view, that's exactly what it is. So we're saying that it's like a seesaw. We take 100,000 more, they take 100,000 less. So that's exactly the way the town looks at it.
Yeah, no, and I think all Winona was saying was that should be the message around this. And we should be able to tick and tie that. It can't just be.
Well, I think that's why I'm presenting it, Gary, so you know what it is. So when the Board of Ed comes to you and you say, by the way, what'd you do with the 100,000 that the town took off your budget?
Exactly.
Sorry, Mike, I didn't know you had your hand up.
I don't know how to do that, so I'm just chiming in.
Okay.
Just going by the open mics.
No, I think to Winona's point and to Gary's point, and I think this is the whole reason why we had the capital committee, and we realized that there's issues with, you know, buildings that we own and what the town should be covering maintenance. And I think part of the messaging for all of us, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, and Board of Finance, as we bring forward this budget, is that we are, not adding a 100,000, but we're allocating where it should be.
Like, it's really just an accounting situation, right? Where the money is going to be, instead of allocated for the school budget, it's moved over to the town, but the money's not changing. It's not an additional 100,000 that now the school would take that 100,000, go spending on something else. At least that's not shouldn't be the message. The message should be that should come out of your budget because now this town has that part of your budget. But for the taxpayer, it's just a shuffling from one, it comes out of their same pocket, just going from one line item to another, goes from a Board of Ed line item to a town line item. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Okay, I think just in summary, I would say this. In the last 3 years, we've come to you, this is our fourth budget. We don't have a lot of big increases. We have not put on any new people over that time. The only thing we've done, and you've allowed us to do it, was we took our tax collector, made it from a part-time to a full-time, and it's paid big dividends to do that. She's fantastic. Other than that, we haven't added any people. We haven't added any machinery unless we're fixing one, putting one in and taking one out on the town side. And the other thing is we haven't gone into any, other than there's like this camera thing, which is not a big number. We haven't gone into like OpenGov, Infinite Visions, we haven't tied ourselves into any of those things. We've tried to be as fiscally conservative as we could.
Yeah, it seems like whenever we start getting locked into these, subscription contracts, I'll say it like OpenGov, for example, it's the next greatest thing. It always comes to bite us in the backside, always. And I think that's where we're all kind of a little jaded of like, hey, is this camera thing we're going to buy and we have to buy them. If it was, hey, the state was going to come out there and say, we'll buy the cameras and we'll pay the fee every single year. You just have to buy the cameras. Well, then they have a little skin in the game. We have a little skin in the game. It goes back and forth. I think it's you buy the cameras. If you don't want them, great, but you have to eat the cost. But you also have to pay the subscription fee. But we're also going to use them. You have to ask us to use them.
So we don't buy the cameras. We don't own the cameras. They charge us $3,000 per camera to have them set up and work, and they do all the maintenance on them.
But you still have to pay the money.
Oh, we do. But at the end, if we say we don't want to use them, we're not stuck with 2 cameras that we put in the maintenance garage. They're not our cameras. But good points. I mean, that was a good point, and that's something we'll look at. If you come back to it and say your budget needs to be dropped, that's the line we'll go and look at because of the feedback.
I won't speak for the board, but I think people would rather have the cameras go away than have your salary go down.
That's okay. That'll be one of the other things we look at. I'll be honest with you. I'd rather have the cameras than my salary in this particular case. So
I got a soapbox on this for a half a minute, Bob.
Okay.
It's not just your salary, right? The town itself needs to be able to compensate this position appropriately so that we get qualified individuals. So stop calling it your salary because it's not.
It is right now because I'm holding the seat.
Yes, but it is woefully underfunded, like detrimentally underfunded for this.
So as far as the board of first selecting salary in this particular town, okay, unless it's a giant jump, which I would never be asking for, unless it's a giant jump similar to one of our neighboring towns, no one's going to leave a job to come take this job. They'd be crazy to do that. So you're either going to you're going to get one of 2 people, either a retiree or someone that has a business on the side that can run itself while they're here, because you need to be here full time. We know how part-time works and it doesn't. So if you're here available full time, that means you can't be somewhere else. So either retired or you have a business that, like, say, company that can run itself. You just have to check in from time to time. So I don't see where you're going to, even if it was 95,000, I was making a heck of a lot more than that in the lumber business. Why would I leave that job to take this job? I wouldn't do it. I remember when Mark Donahue was the selectman and when Sean, Mark, and Nick were all retiring at the same time. I said, Mark, why don't you run for first selectman? He says, well, I can't take that kind of a cut in my pay. I would never do that. So it's unfortunate, but it's where we are. And I don't see this job ever being the $125,000 job that you can support a family on. It's not going to be that. So I understand what you're saying.
I disagree. Like, I don't need it to be $125,000, but I disagree with your argument that just because you're retired, you can take less pay. Like the role should be funded appropriately. That's my opinion. It is what it is, but, and I know you're uncomfortable talking about it while you're in the position.
Well, and I hate to be in the first line. I mean, if it was like the 16th line, I would be a little more comfortable.
Can we move it to the 16th?
You can't, it's B1. So I appreciate what your thoughts, and I think that it's a job that requires a lot of time. And if you are retired and you're set up for retirement, as I am, it works for me. It might not work for the next person. You're right. Maybe the next person who's not set up for retirement has the time, but doesn't have the wherewithal to get paid this amount of money and do the job.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Gary, then Carl.
Good. I was gonna add, but Sarah had it covered.
Okay. Carl, you're up.
Are we going down and discuss some of the capital expenditures, or is that at a different time?
No, we can do that, but
do that.
nothing's changed, Carl, except for the fact that we took 25,000 out of the parking lot that we put into the steep grant application. That was to redo the town garage, the town parking lot, town hall parking lot, and the 298 parking lot.
All right, so one of my questions is on the tanker for 7-year lease, how many years we have left paying $70,000 a year? Do we know that?
It should be on. I think it's on here.
Well, it's not on the sheet I have, but I'm sitting limited here.
If it's, you know,
7-year lease. But it's cut off.
So we don't need it tonight. If you just get, so when we go sit down and discuss things,
no, I think as I see, I think it got cut off, but it is on here and it's on the budget when we do it. When we present the budget, it'll be on. I think it's just 5 of 7.
we got 2 more years. All right, is there anything else that we're paying that we're getting close to the end of the lease?
Well, just the approvals from last year, we only went into, I think we had 1 3-year lease and 2 4-year leases. So now we're already in year 2. We didn't take any leases that were any more than that as far as timeline.
And the ambulance that we were paying on before that came and went, and we're putting away money right now for the new one. Am I correct?
Yes, but we have the new one, so it's already running.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
There is one thing I want to bring up since we're talking about equipment. So if you remember, we talked about an excavator probably about a month or 2 ago, and the Board of Selectmen almost put it into our capital. And it was going to be between 95 and 125,000 to get an excavator. And we do rent one on a regular basis. And talking to Alan, and Alan's doing an amazing job on roads. And we know with the way the weather's been changing, we get a lot of more washouts with rain, heavy rainstorms. And he's put in more new basins, new culverts, new piping of the roads. And that, whenever we do that, we need an excavator. So it's costing us now quite a bit of money to do that. We just did the ones on Chester Main Road. It's usually done in April or May. I think at the time we said, well, let's not put it in the budget, but we had in the capital budget, but we have money coming back from 2 auctions, the obligation of funds, and he's got about $65,000 worth of equipment we'll be selling from the transfer station during that conversion. I think we have, not counting the obligation, just in the auctions and the sell-off at the transfer station, we have about 95,000. If you can get an excavator for 120, now we own it. It might make sense to us. Again, looking at the way the weather's changing, the kind of the stormwater that we're getting running off on these roads, he can get the town in a much better position, and we'd be getting rid of the old excavator because we won't need it anymore. We have compactors, so we won't need the old one we have up at the, yes. So as Gary likes to say, if we bring in a piece of equipment, we need to get rid of equipment. We're actually getting rid of 5 pieces of equipment to bring in 1 new one. That'll happen, wouldn't happen until probably April or May. We come to the Board of Finance and say, this money just came in, we'd like to use it. Similar to what the fire company did with the auction. They want to have lights on their truck and they got it out of the sale of the old truck. So again, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's not off the table. It's, we just talked about it yesterday, but the fact that we're trending fairly well in some of the revenues we're bringing in town, it might make sense to do it, and in the long run would save the town quite a bit of money.
How soon after if you came with appropriation, could you purchase one of those? Is it
immediate? They're on the lot, so it's immediate. He would go up with wherever he would go that knows, he knows quite a bit about this. We go with someone else and they decide there's it's like a medium side, not the small one you see people on their backyards have, and not the really big one like we have at the transfer station, because that footprint's too big to be on our roads. So somewhere in between, they can dig these these ditches and put the piping in under the roads and so on. So they run between 95 and 120 in
You
that
can find
range.
them with a decent amount of hours on them and being able to be in good shape.
Yep. So anyway, again, it's just something, since we're talking about equipment, I thought I'd bring it up, but it's nothing for tonight and it'll be something down the road. And we'll have the revenue to back it up to say this is where the revenue came from. Okay.
Michael. Wow, you do you find the wave?
Mike, are you?
Yeah,
We can hear
I
you.
mean, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I just there's an elephant in the room that I kind of want to see if you have looked into and can give me an answer on the fact that we have a potential give back of $518,000 from last fiscal year.
Mhm.
Do we know why we have so much money?
Yeah. So there was right off the bat, there was $130,000 give back from the state of Connecticut. They had a lot of money extra in their coffers and they gave big give backs to all the towns. Our give back small compared to some of the other towns, but that was an unbudgeted revenue increase. We also had some fairly good sized give backs in the state trooper line, snow removal line. We had a big increase in short-term debt, short-term investments rather that Sean did. We also had an increase in tuition students coming into the school. And we had an increase in the grand list because of people building buildings, solar farm, new winery, those kind of things. So the town is actually, I was talking to one of the other towns near us, and they actually started their budget season off this year at a $500,000 decrease in funding. Because we've been lucky that we've had these other additional ways to get revenue in our town. And then obviously it's at least trending like it's going to continue that way with, if EB builds their building and this isn't, I guess EB is not even a maybe because I was with the building inspector yesterday and we're talking about how we can, on a part-time building inspector's time, be the building inspector for 480,000 square foot building. So it's happening, but these things just don't happen overnight. But I think we're trending well, Mike. And I think that's why we have the give back. It's not that we over budgeted. We just had some additional revenues and some prizes. And the treasurer doing the great job he did with the short-term investments.
Okay.
And the good job the school's doing with bringing in students.
All right. That's helpful because, I mean, obviously we're talking about a budget of expenditures here. And if we're over budgeting for expenditures, but it sounds more like it's more on the revenue side that wasn't necessarily anticipated that we're having that kind of give back. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And
All right, guys, I've got to go. Hopefully we're all set for tonight.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else from the board?
What I'll be is I'll be here next Wednesday also. So when even though you talk about the school, if there's a question for the town, I'll be here to answer it. So, okay. Thank you.
All right. Moving on. We had meeting minutes, but they're not on the agenda. So we're going to table those. All right, so let's move on. Public comments. All right, you're up.
This is on? Can you hear me? Okay.
No.
You can't.
Uh,
What do I gotta do? Yeah, it's gotta be a button somewhere.
Tap on it.
Just tap on it. Oh, it's on?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Get closer? Okay. I think the big word for me this year is accountability. I've been looking at the budget. Well, I mean, I got the budget today like you did. But I've been following the selectmen's meeting and listening the best I can. Sometimes I can't make a comment because I don't have the right IT guy, I guess. But we got to remember this is a revalue year too. Every reval year, my taxes have gone up. So I take accountability in a reval and I looked at the budget. Now I understand the big part of it is the revenue. So then I went, of course, to the Board of Selectmen budget. And I agree that our first selectman, the second selectman, and the third selectman definitely needs to be improved. We need to pay these people who put a lot of time in. Not that our Board of Finance don't, because I know your pay is real high.
The floor is.
But anyways, I really do support the selectmen going up. I think the second and third selectmen's pay should go up. And I think there's room to do that. Because I believe there's other things in this budget that can be shifted. Let me put it that way. And I'm saying this for the benefit of the Board of Selectmen too. Okay, I won't get into that one. Took me a while to figure out exactly what was what, but I see where the green is a reduction and the yellows are additions, and there's a lot of yellows here. Okay, I went to town building maintenance. Okay, I saw that several times through here. We got, let's see, the maintenance was on, well, there was 100,000 that were taken from the schools. To a taxpayer simple like me, you take 100,000 from that budget, you put it in our budget, that means that budget's going to be $100,000 less than what they come for. Don't ask me for another 100,000 from the next budget, which would be the school budget. That automatically gives them $100,000 less. And when they present theirs, I will definitely have something to say about that. There's building maintenance in here for, let's see if I wrote down the right numbers. It was for, there was one in here for the school. Is that the town building here? That was the 100,000. But you also had, I believe there was okay, so there's $170,000 for school maintenance then. Well, that's a town building, I understand too. That confuses me. I'm a simple man. Simple taxpayer, that's all I do. And when people reach in my pocket, I gotta ask these questions. I might not have to understand them, but I'm gonna ask them.
Brian, can I?
Yeah.
You're talking about the North Stonington Education Building, which is the building that we're in right now, correct? Well, you're in.
Yes, that's the
You're talking about
7,000 one.
The $70,000 that's in the budget for that.
Right.
Yeah, it's B20.
We also have,
Oh, 06.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think, that's a budget item that's always been in this town budget because we own that building. So I don't think that's an extra, just to be clear. The 100,000 that's in that's in the school buildings maintenance is new. So I just want to clarify that.
All right, but that we own that building too. So that's a maintenance. We also pay for maintenance on the recreation building, the old firehouse. There's another maintenance. We got a lot of maintenance in here. I don't know why they can't just put it in there, all the town buildings we have. There's the maintenance. It makes it a lot easier. But that's why I'm questioning them. The town building maintenance on C3.04, there's 20,000 there. Which one is that for? What maintenance is that? Is that the old town hall? I mean, I see so many maintenance in here. Used to be we see a lot of attorney fees in here. Now I see there's not as many. And those things bother me because I just feel they add up and add up and add up. And if a lot of taxpayers aren't watching this, next thing you know, we got a lot of money going out there for maintenance. And this is what I appeal to the Board of Finance, because I know you people know this better than I do. And you know I watch, but I'm not always up on speed with everything. And I want to know where my money's going. I think I told you about my pill situation already. And to pay $100 for 5 pills, I think that's a little extreme. So I'm watching every dollar I have, every nickel I have, every penny I got, even though it cost the United States government 3 cents to make. That's not my problem. My problem is my penny. Don't take my penny. We have repairs for the farmhouse. The 1750 farmhouse repairs. Another 10,000. Did I read that right? No, 25,000. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong line. So these all add up, and I'd like to see them maybe remedied. Maybe why we have to have 25,000. Maybe we can get away with 5,000. I see the social services. I can give when I can. It's not too often, but when I can, I can. Sometimes I can give by making something. You know, I can't do it all with money because I'm on a fixed income. I'm senior citizen on a fixed income. And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new places, which I'm sure they can use the money. But maybe this isn't the year for our town to support them. I don't know how many people in our town use these services. I'm sure they're bona fide. They need the money. So do we. I've said it before. It's our town budget, and we have to look out for our town and the entities that been in our town for years. The library asked for an extra 15,000, took it right out. Somebody comes in and asks for 20,000. Okay, let's give it to them. Let them go through a few years. You know, everybody wants to be a 501 type thing. Now, do they pay taxes on a 501? No. Can I be a 501? I don't want to pay no taxes. How about that? Now, let's really look at that. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm saying that maybe this is not the year to give all this extra money. We've given so many times. And I pointed out before, we have the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. We can go there. There's plenty of places people can get things.
Yeah.
Look at that again.
Yeah, Brian, I think I can speak.
Don't give me my 2 minutes. That's it.
No, I'm just saying that I think you've been to enough of our meetings where we try to be the oversight board and be the good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and to be able to provide the services that are needed to supply the school and the taxpayers of the town.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
We go through pretty much every line item. I don't know, Gary, what do you think? Sarah, we probably go through it 5-10 times and everything. So, it's just, we hear you. We definitely hear you. There's a lot of people in this town exactly like you on fixed incomes. So
Well,
we are,
let me finish my one point.
Yep.
Okay. I say, like I say, I see a lot of money go here, there, and everywhere. I don't really see it going for senior center. The library has done excellent for everyone in this town. I'd like to see, and I hear it a lot, that might not be a big number, but you take those might not be a big number and you add them up, comes to a big number.
Mhm.
But like I say, I'm just going to appeal to you, my Board of Finance, who I trust a lot. And I do with the Board of Selectmen. I have their respect. I understand where they're coming from on it. It's a tough job to be in the positions you're all in, but I'm just asking, let's try to keep these budgets, especially with both of them. The Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, you keep that to 2.5 or less. You have a very happy taxpayer here, and I'm sure we all will be. But that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
So thanks.
all right, thanks.
Thanks for
Brian.
putting up with me and let me speak
No
over
pro-
2 minutes.
No problem. Michael, you had your hand up?
Not on purpose.
Oh, still trying to figure that out, huh?
Yeah.
Sean Murphy.
Sean Murphy, just a couple questions. I just wanted to, when I look at this sheet you got tonight, anticipating a 3% increase for our unions, that just doesn't parallel with the last Social Security increase. And I think we ought to attempt to try for that because, the town is, as you said, made up of a lot of seniors, and we ought to keep them in mind when we're awarding contracts, when we're, approving budgets. I too think that, that although I don't think Social Security went up 2.5, I think 2.5 is a fair increase across the board for the town budget. And also a note under social services, and I mentioned this to Bob before, but before it gets too far along in the budget, different reiterations of the budget, I think that the Lantern Hill Valley Association is not a social services. I don't believe that the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District is a social services, and the Frights and Lights Light Parade. I'm not saying they shouldn't be in the budget, but I wouldn't want to see this, they actually go forward and we start charging things and they now fall under social services, and hopefully somewhere along the line, those could be moved over somewhere else. In the budget, similar to the library or the weed control for the lakes or whatever. They're not social services. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online? Last call. I can't read it. Jonna.
Hi, Jonna Chokas, Rocky Hollow Road. I don't know if Bob is still in, but I think the town selectman is setting a dangerous precedent by allowing private institutions to be publicly funded. And when I look at the giving closet, when I look at the parades, when I look at even some of the, maybe not rec committee, I'm not a big fan of the rec committee, but the cameras, I know that, I'm part of Avalonia, and we had asked the town for money at one point and it was denied. And I understand why, and we fundraise for that. But I think when the town starts allowing private people, private organizations to be public funded, it's there needs to be a precedent set, personally. And I just don't think the town should be in that business, personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary?
No, I was just acknowledging Jana and I wanted to
Oh.
thank her for her opinion.
Thank you for your opinion. Anybody else? For the crowd here? No, nobody? John, Judy? Nobody else? All right. Motion adjourned.
By the way, I got voted in tonight by the legislature, so it's official.
Congratulations.
And the ethics committee has accepted my petition to determine my status on the Board of Finance. And so we should hear about that soon. And I'm not going anywhere until they tell me I can't.
Cool.
Congratulations, Mike.
Congratulations. All
Thank you. Thank you.
right, we have a motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.